Hello and welcome to, I almost said Fear Fans. Welcome to Insane Asylum. Tonight we have Wendy Moxley Roe, and she's known for cemeteries and Juliet Prison in Illinois. So we're going to have some talk. Welcome. How
Hi,
are
how
you
you
today?
doing? Good, but cold here in Virginia.
Is it cold there in Virginia?
It is. It's supposed to get down in the lower 20s tonight, and we're supposed to
Oh,
get
you're
some.
just as cold as we are.
Yeah, today we are definitely, and it kind of hit us hard because it's been pretty warm up until a few days ago.
We've been under the Arctic chill for the last few days.
Yeah, I've been watching, on social media. I still have a lot of friends out there, and I've seen everybody fighting. I'm like, I'm just so not ready.
Yeah, yeah. I don't travel this time of year, so
No, I don't blame you.
it's too much. I mean, we got a better vehicle than we used to have, but it's still
Right.
too much for
Right,
me.
well, you gotta always worry about the other people too, not even so much yourself.
Right, right. There's a lot of idiots out there on the road.
Yeah.
So you got a couple of books out there too. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so the one is mine, the ones I posted today. When I first started into any of this, the cemeteries and the paranormal and the writing and all of that, I had moved to Chicago from here in the East Coast in 2008. And then in 2012, actually, my daughter was about 15 or 16, and she kept bugging me to take her to this haunted cemetery. And it was about 45 minutes south of where we lived. And I eventually, on a Sunday, um, took her out there, and it just started this whole thing. I met my friend and colleague Carl at the cemetery that day, and it was he and I that created the website and the Facebook page. And then he knew, and we had an association with a known Chicago author at the time with Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and worked with her, both of us, closely with the book, and a lot of other people well known in the Chicago area paranormal community. And so then that kind of eventually, when I got into all of it, it led me to Joliet Prison one day, and like 6 years of just reading about its crazy history. And that's when I ended up doing my own book about the prison.
Uh, so tell me more about that prison. I haven't been able to get there yet myself, but I did
Pretty neat.
drive around there when I was
Yeah.
down there one time and took some pictures from the outside. It was like under construction, kind of like remodeling and stuff because
Yeah.
parts of it wasn't safe, so they had to redo it all.
Yeah. So it was built in 1858, and it's pretty original. Of course, they built, they chose the site because at the time the only prison that they had was in Alton, and it was way overcrowded, and it was practically crumbling to the ground. So they chose this site in Joliet because they mined the limestone directly from the ground under them, and they built the
Wow.
prison around them. It was prisoners transferred from Alton that built the prison. So they literally built the walls around them. And it functioned until a functioning prison until the early 2000s. I believe it was 2002. It was a processing center for a while. There's been lots of famous people in there, obviously, because it's 45 minutes south of Chicago. And at the time, of course, anybody who got in trouble there, that's where they went.
And
And it was,
they also filmed the most famous movie Blues Brothers there.
yes, it is the prison that you see. in Blues Brothers, when in the beginning when he's coming and getting released from
Yeah,
jail, that
yeah,
is
yeah.
Juliet.
I think that was Jake.
Yeah. So there
I
were
get
lots
confused,
of
but yeah, it was uh, John Belushi's character.
yeah. I tell a story that one of my favorite stories about that is Dan Aykroyd said that one night while they were filming, and of course, this was in their heyday, and Belushi disappeared. It's notoriously known that they had an actual cocaine budget for that movie, and
Well,
he disappeared. Yeah, yeah, that's like one of
think
the
about think
things
about the
I've heard.
drugs that went. Think about the drugs that went around when they were in Saturday Night Live.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm
You
pretty
know,
sure it was. Yeah, somebody some one of them came out and said that, there was an actual, drug button on the movie. One night, Belushi disappears, and Dan Aykroyd just, starts driving the local streets looking for him. It was really late at night, and he just happened to go by one house. The lights were all on, and he pulled in, and sure enough, he was in the driveway, or Belushi was in the house. He had just wandered to these people's home, knocked on their door. They let him in, gave him a peanut butter sandwich and something to drink, and he passed out on their couch. And that's where Aykroyd found him and rescued him and took him back. So, yeah, I'm
and
sure it was
and now
fun.
his brother is basically, when he's not living on his farm, he actually lives in Chicago, and
Yeah,
because he's oh, what was it? It's growing with blue. He's growing marijuana plants,
right. Yeah.
and the dispensaries down there in the Chicagoland area, some of them carry the Blues Brothers strain.
Restraint. I've seen it actually all the way out here, I believe.
I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, it was it was a while ago.
You know,
Or it
I'm
may
on.
have been when the spring when we were in Chicago, maybe.
I won't pay money down in Chicago for any of that.
Oh,
The
no, I can
taxes are
imagine.
way too high.
Oh,
You know,
yeah. But
I
I
go to
live
I go to Michigan. For that.
yeah, that's what I've heard from people, my friends that still live out there. It's legal here too. I live in Virginia, but in Arlington, and we're literally 10 minutes from the DC line. So it's the same
Wow.
thing. I have to watch in DC, some of the prices are really high.
So we got
So,
a couple of because I've been to Illinois quite a bit. My wife
yeah,
and I have been traveling there for Paracons and other things.
right.
And let's talk about that real tiny hidden away cemetery.
Yeah,
You know,
Bachelor's Grove.
exactly. You
Yeah,
know, that one, I went out there once and I took pictures, and I got to go back out there again because since then I've heard more stories. But
yeah.
let's hear
There's
it.
so many. There's so
So,
many.
what is your favorite thing about Bachelor's Grove, and why did you write a book on it?
Well, we did all this because it starts with I moved to Chicago in 2008, like I said earlier.
Hmm.
And the reason that I moved is because I had been married, I had children. I'd been married for almost 15 years, and my husband was killed in a car accident.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We lived Thank you. It's been almost 20 years now. It was 2006, about this time of year. And I spent 2 years after that trying to make things work there. It just wasn't good. I lived out in the middle of any nowhere. Long story short, I made some friends through music message boards that I had known for years, through some music, a band that I used to follow. And I moved out. These friends of mine said, "Come." I went a couple times after he passed to visit, and I just loved it. They said, "Why don't you try to make it work out here?" And so I did. It went really well, but in 2012, I used to be a very shy, introverted person, and I was doing well financially. I had, you know, my own apartment. And my daughter was doing well, and but I really had no friends, and I didn't really have any hobbies or anything. Um, I went to a concert one night to see The Fix. It was a free show near where I lived, and that night I just broke down. I was really just very lonely at that time, and literally prayed and said, "I need something, you know, throw me a bone here." And it was the next morning that I walked into Bachelor's Grove Cemetery with my daughter, and I met Carl there, and eventually we got together. Became very good friends. It was about 45, 50-minute drive, and I learned that he lived right around the corner from where I did. And I noticed him because he had is it a PSB 7, I think, at the time? And he was underneath this tree and he was talking and conducting, you know, his own little investigation. It just went from there. One of the things that we, in the time that we were researching heavily and going to the cemetery a lot, is that people find the need to come back for some reason or another when after they visit for the first time, and I was no different. I went there, I was absolutely fascinated, with the lore and the history and the things that I started talking to Carl about, and so it just kinda opened up a whole thing for me, a whole 'nother world that I never really knew about, and I learned a lot about myself, so I have a soft spot for it because it brought a lot to my life, and so that just ensued, or the research ensued. The cemetery itself is really old as well. It's one of some of the people that are buried in there were the founding fathers of the towns surrounding Midlothian, and it it was at one time a working farm, and they had dedicated an acre plot to be a cemetery. And basically, it was just local farmers and families that were buried there. It was never legally made a cemetery because it was just, you know, a farm. They
Right.
later sold the farm to the forest preserves, and you know, it has just it's been there. It's suffered terrible vandalism, um, you know, but it's also had a lot of people advocate for it, and clean up, because it really in the 70s got really bad. And I think that's when all of the ghost stories and the legend really started amping up, was like the 60s and 70s. They cut the road off that ran in front of it, and it just became a path back to the cemetery. So it sits in the forest preserves in the middle of a forest.
Yeah, it's quite
For
a
those
hike
of
to
you
get
who don't
back
know.
there.
Yeah, it's about a quarter of a mile walk, and you have to park across the street at the forest preserve parking lot.
That's
The funny thing is, we on our website, we give directions and everything because, um, even when I got there the first time, I had no idea. I was like, "Where is the cemetery?"
yeah. See, I would have never found it without a guide. We had a
Yeah.
guide. I had what I consider my mentor with me. Well, we're visiting a few places,
Yeah.
and that was one of the main places he took us was Bachelor's Grove.
Mhm.
And the gentleman, you probably heard of him too, being down in Chicago and stuff. His name is Dale Kazmarek.
Yeah, I know him
Okay,
well.
very good friend, and
Absolutely.
I consider him a mentor because he's been doing this since the 70s.
I call
Right?
him he is the godfather of Chicago paranormal. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good title for him. I like that.
Yes, we all do. Yeah, especially with Bachelor's Grove. I mean, he was there when the picture was taken, which I have we developed a traveling exhibit. I have like photos and once we got into this, we talked to so many people and found people would bring us pictures and there were just so many crazy experiences. One of the biggest things people always ask me is about my experiences. And I always say I really haven't had an experience like other people in the paranormal have. I've never seen, a ghost. I've never seen, or had, but I've had strange things happen. And when I went in there, it was a life changing thing. So it's a kind of a spiritual thing for me. I truly believe it. I've met too many people that have um, very similar stories. uh, One of the biggest stories, most popular, is about the disappearing house that people see in Bachelor's Grove. And during our research, we went back. There's another researcher, I'm sure you know, Richard Crow, also back in the day was one of the first to go into Bachelor's Grove. And we found one of his old DVDs at the library. And he literally had two different women from that had been in the cemetery and swore up and down that they had seen a house coming
Really?
in the path somewhere. Yeah. And he was talking to them separately. And what he did was he asked them both separately, without the knowledge of the other, neither knew about the other, to draw what they, saw, what the house looked like. And then he had them meet on film at Bachelor's Grove and show their photos, and they were almost identical. And, we actually had someone come in one time when we were in the cemetery and say to Carl, well, who lives in the house that's, on the way in? And we were like, there's no house there. And they were like, yeah, yeah, the farmhouse, the white farmhouse, on the, we were like, no, there's no house there. And they went, we showed them, there's no house there. And they were like, oh my God. They literally saw a house, and it's one of the more common experiences that people have there, one of the big stories.
Yeah, and isn't there something like a lady in white kind of
Yeah, so
there
that's
as
how I
well?
went with the picture. Anybody can Google the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and the photo will come up. It was, taken by Judy Huff, and she was with Dale was there. He gathered a group of his people. It was in the '90s, and I can't remember the exact year, but he had gathered them there. There was nobody there, and what they did was they let each member of the group that was there that day walk the cemetery with a clipboard and write down any areas that they felt, anything off, or, whatever they were feeling in there. And then once they all finished doing that, they went back and noted the places if they had in common. And somehow they went back and took photos. And when she developed hers, the woman was sitting on the headstone, and there's a group of them there. There was no one in the cemetery. It's also been examined. It was on Ghost Adventures, I think, was it called Aftershocks or something? And they brought in a Kodak expert, and it's legit from what they said. It has not been tampered with, which, we all knew that it wasn't. But to have an expert come in and say, also, this is a legit photo. We don't know what this is.
Yeah, that kind of sucks when you have to have an expert, and they can't just, but,
Right. But you know
nowadays,
how it works. Yeah.
photographs and things are so easily
Yes. Altered.
manipulated
Absolutely.
and altered, and it's, but, for people to say, like, let's take the Patterson footage, it's most famous Bigfoot footage there is from
Yeah.
1967, and they say, oh, that's fake. That's so fake.
Right.
And I look at it, and I've heard other people look at it, and they say it's real. I mean, you look at Hollywood back in '67. when they made Planet of the Apes, those
Mhm.
things looked so fake when we watched those movies from the 60s. You know,
We thought they were cool then.
that would be an expensive suit to make for a guy to wear just for a hoax. You
Right, for a
know,
photo, right?
yeah. While it
Yes.
was actually filmed, but still, you know,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
didn't have the
um,
digital technology back then.
oh,
So there
no,
was
yeah.
no way that that could have been manipulated. You know,
No.
it would have cost them way too much money. You know, some people, I think,
Right.
lack the common sense, you know, and that's one
Yeah.
thing, you know, they either immediately assume or, you know,
Well,
and
they
it's
just
like,
don't have a mind. And
but now,
I always say, the ones there's nothing absolute in the paranormal. You
well,
can
it's
say
all
this
theories.
scientific, yes, absolutely. And
It's
so
all
who is to
theories
say one is right, exactly. That's my
until
point. It's all points and
you bring 100% scientific proof. Everything's
right,
a theory. So there's no wrong answers either.
right. Exactly.
You know, which makes the paranormal, you know, it's got such a vast, you know, you've got cemeteries, hauntings, ghosts, cryptids, UFOs. I mean, you could go on and on and on. I mean,
Right.
some of that stuff, people even bring in like the serial killers because the house is haunted. Well,
Yeah.
not he wasn't really a serial killer. It all took place in one place, but it's like the Amityville house.
Yeah.
You know, the original story of the Defoe that killed his parents and his siblings in that house. Now
Mm,
that truth part is scary in and of itself
right.
because those people were violently killed.
Yeah, in their sleep and by someone their family. That's yeah. That's everybody's worst nightmare, I think. Um, and actually one of the it's funny you mentioned that I just watched The Conjuring 4, and one of the things I've been talking about here lately is the Warrens and some of the things that they did and just what I see on social media. And it's a big topic that's kind of circulating now. And just my one thought is that it's so, whether whatever anybody feels about them, they were pioneers in this, this community or however you want to, whatever you want to call it. Um, and I just noticed that for years, everybody just spoke so well of them until after she passed. And then once she passed, it's like slowly come out and this one saying this and that. You know how it goes. It's
Yeah,
pretty
it's kind of
crazy.
sad, yeah, that people have to do that after people are gone, or you know,
Right.
you don't give the person a chance to defend themselves.
Yeah. Well, that was just my thought goes to why did you wait? I don't know.
You
That's just
know,
me.
as far as I'm concerned, yeah, they were pioneers. You know, and their
Right.
museum is legendary. You know, and all of that.
And
You
the
know,
things that they did, they really were. And
well, they
uh,
paved the road. I mean, you look
for a
back at
lot of
when they were
things.
looking into this stuff in the '60s and the '70s and stuff.
Hmm.
It wasn't really that acceptable. If I was walking around in the '70s saying I want to be a paranormal investigator, I'd get laughed at or locked up,
Oh, yeah.
you
Oh,
know, in
yeah.
the insane asylum, you know. I
Yep.
mean,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and now it's like everybody, because we've all got these little computers in our phone, everybody's got, you know, going out and taking pictures of UFOs and stuff. You know, it's
Right.
crazy. You know, the
Mhm.
digital
Yeah.
world and
Yeah,
the way
it's
that
total different.
this industry has moved forward, it's also
Yeah.
become more socially acceptable, but everybody thinks that they're an amateur when they're going out taking pictures and stuff, and then they send them to me or somebody, and it's like, do some research. Look up
First.
MUFIN and send them to the local office, where somebody is going to actually investigate some of those. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Mhm.
crazy, but it's also fun in the same time because I like the history that's involved in these
Right.
places.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. I
Uh,
I really have started focusing more, I kinda dipped my toe into doing some conferences and stuff this year, and it was so fun. Um, and, that's where I go with it, I like the haunted history, and of course, that's, what I write, but, um I just grew up that way. My parents always were. I remember being in a cemetery at a church with my mom and dad when I was maybe 10, and they were doing like genealogical research on my dad's family. And,
yeah,
it just
that would have
was,
been pretty hard back then
yeah, no,
compared to
we
what.
had gone to a church, yeah, to look at some church records.
Yeah,
And
you
I
had
do
to.
remember being in the cemetery, and even then at 10 years old, I was like this just fascinating thrill. It's what I
Yeah,
felt standing on
well,
the dusk.
I spent my time a lot of times with my cousins and stuff like that, playing Ghost in the Graveyard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
and I grew up, well, my grandpa and my uncles, it was like three houses in front and one in back. They took up the whole block other than the cemetery and the funeral home. Those houses were all owned by family. And
Yeah.
little did I know as a kid that I'm playing in the most haunted cemetery in Wisconsin. One of them,
Wow.
Forest Hill Cemetery. It's on Speedway Road in Madison. But
Ah,
I used to play in that a lot when I was growing up. And it is
yeah.
kind of a spooky place, even though it's like right in the heart of Madison on the west side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got
Oh,
a
yeah.
road right in front of it called Speedway Road, and it's named that for a reason. You know, it's a dangerous
Right.
road, you know. But like I said, my grandma and grandpa and stuff lived across the street. And when me
Yeah.
and my cousins were there, well, we wouldn't stay in grandma's house. We'd go across the street in the cemetery and play.
Yeah. I've
It,
since I started into after I got into Bachelor's Grove, I just started visiting some more of the cemeteries in the area. I've always liked to take pictures, and it just became a thing for me. They're very quiet there and it's peaceful. But in my journey since then, it's really strange. My father was in the army, and I lived in Frankfurt, Germany from 87 to 90. And the complex that we lived in had this cemetery right next to it. Well, there was a park in between our complex and then a brick wall and this cemetery. And I wasn't into that kind of stuff when I was younger, like I am now, but we always walked, my friends and I, through that cemetery to get to other places we were going to. There was this park we used to go to and all this other stuff. And I just always remember being in awe because it's absolutely beautiful. The statuary is very old, and the statuary is very grand. And it's overgrown and dark and just really kind of spooky. But the weird thing is that now two people I've recognized the cemetery twice in my cemetery on Facebook. Someone has posted, and the one guy I know actually pretty well, he was just there a couple months ago, and I was like, "Is this in Frankfurt?" And he was like, "Yeah." But, just the interesting I think that's, interesting I come across these people now that, go to see that, and I lived right next to it, so.
um, so Chicago is one of those things that's got a couple of really good, interesting cemeteries.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but the one story that I'm really fascinated with is Bloody Mary,
Yeah.
or Resurrection Mary.
Resurrect, yeah. Yeah.
Resurrection Mary. Well,
Yeah. That's
it's the one that takes up Archer Avenue.
Oh, yeah. I spent a lot of time, the little bar across the street,
Chet's.
Chet's Melody Lounge. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I got
know
a
that.
T-shirt from there.
I do too. I was gonna wear it tonight. I should have. Um, but yeah, I love Chet's. I know the owners well. When I came in to Chicago in March, I actually had a little like paranormal get together. I never got my book came out during the COVID shutdown. So I never got to have a book party or anything because
Oh, that's
nobody
too
was
bad.
doing anything. Yeah. So and I had left Chicago, so I just kind of, I had some food and a cake, and some people came, and it was awesome. So, yeah, I love Chet's Melody Lounge. I don't know a ton about Resurrection Mary. I've been over there many times. I love, um, did you have you've been there, right?
Yeah,
Have
we
you been in?
in my travels over the last. Well, see, I've been doing this since 2019.
Yeah.
Um, so in my travels, we actually got the whole story eventually. Um, you probably know them, the uh, Boo couple. Um,
Yeah,
or
Lorelai.
yeah, I was trying to think of
Who's
her
your
name. Thank
friend?
you, and Jeff.
Yeah. Mhm, and the foodie. Yeah.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
went to a couple of their events, and we got to learn the whole story,
Yeah.
and got to see because there's a bar. I can't remember the name of the bar, but it sits right across the street from where the ballroom was.
Yeah, the Irish legend.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's where we met. I met Lorelai and Jeff for the first time.
Mhm.
It was like a get together at that bar. So we learned
Yeah.
the whole story where it started instead of just
Mhm.
the end down by
Right.
Resurrection Cemetery. So we
Mhm.
were so it's been a very interesting story that so many
Yeah.
people have picked up this person, Resurrection Mary as she's called, and
Um,
dropped her off right around that Chet's Melody Lounge, or one cab
yeah.
driver went and followed her in thinking, oh, she didn't pay the tab because she got into a cab, and he went chasing her in, and he's like looking around the bar, and they're like, well,
Fun.
nobody came in here.
Mhm.
Have a
Yeah.
seat. You saw Resurrection Mary. We'll buy you a Bloody Mary. And I think that's what that story was that I got from Chuts that day. But
Yes.
it's interesting how when you get all of the story put together, you get,
Yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
I was getting the ending, a lot of the ending down by that Resurrection Cemetery, but when we
Yeah.
went to that Irish pub, we got the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
You know,
Way back when, and the
right?
girl that died. Yeah, there's a lot of theories with that one too. I think they've kinda narrowed it down. I know Ursula, who wrote the Bachelor's Grove book, has done a lot extensive research on that story, um, and, I know some of it in the background. I just don't know, detailed, but it was always fascinating. When my parents came to Chicago, that was the one of the places my dad wanted to visit. We took him and took his photo in front of the gates with where they said they had the hand marks at one point.
Yeah, cemeteries can be quite interesting. You know, I
Yeah, they are. There's a lot of history in there, because
there
we all end up.
they have one called Eagle Road Cemetery out here in Madison. It's not too far from where I live, and
Yeah,
and that's like Bachelor's Grove.
yeah,
It's kind of tiny. It's hidden.
yeah,
It's on farmland. It's not well known, but boy, does some strange stuff happen out there at night.
Yeah, I bet.
You
I
know,
grew up, yeah, where I grew up was in, the middle of the woods and stuff too, and, you know, it happens. I know there were some tiny cemeteries there, and people were always seeing stuff.
yeah, this one had a dog growling,
Oh, wow.
but
Yeah,
we couldn't
you
see it,
couldn't see it.
and we had thermals. You know,
Huh,
we've got like, it's a little cheap thermal camera, but nothing.
yeah,
We didn't pick
right.
up nothing. We even our cameras had night vision, not a thing.
Huh,
You know, but the first time we went out to that cemetery, we were out there. It was after midnight. We were out there late at night. We heard the growling, and then all of a sudden, we had a flyover,
huh,
and this flyover was like military planes,
wow,
because you felt them because of how loud they can get, right, with the sonic
right.
booms and stuff like that. But they weren't going
Mhm,
that, they didn't reach the sonic, but you knew they were military jets.
right.
And the thing was, it's like, why the hell are they flying over after midnight?
Yeah,
And the
odd.
nearest airport can't even support those planes,
Huh,
because it was just a little tiny private airport,
right.
the nearest airport. I think I've actually got we actually got that the flyovers. I tried to go like this with the camera, but you know
Oh, to catch.
the noise, you definitely heard them coming and going.
Hmm,
And
yeah,
it's just strange. Late at night, most airports are closed around here. We're not like Chicago or something where O'Hare is open quite late,
yeah.
you know. And it
Mhm,
was just one of the strangest things. So we've been going back every now and then.
yeah, I
It
bet.
it, it kind of sucks now that it's just me and my wife, but we get more done. We see more,
Yeah. It's
and
just me and my fiance too. Most of my paranormal and cemetery friends are all in Chicago, and I love it here. My family and I'm happy here, but all of my buddies that I had in that field are all out there. So, but we have a good time. We go and visit places, and um, he's gotten a little bit into it too.
yeah, yeah. My wife. Well, my wife's gotten into it because of me. I took we went out and bought a 2019, little about 2 years now, and we've had it. Ford Explorer Police Interceptor Edition. So it's
Nice.
painted black and white still.
Yeah.
So my wife's got this cricket thing, and we did a lot of vinyl, and it's like we believe Bigfoot, all kinds of things.
Right.
So instead of being, you go to I've gone to quite a few paracons this year, more than I have in the past.
Yeah.
And everywhere I go, it seems like somebody's got the Echo One in some form or another.
Yeah.
I've even seen the Echo One as a Chevy Caprice, like an old squad car Chevy Caprice, and it's like, really? That thing's a station wagon, an old school station wagon ambulance, watch
Yeah.
Ghostbusters. But they try to deck it out like that, or brand new vehicle Echo One with a Ghostbuster. No, I'm doing it all different. So if I had my way, I'd be driving around in a '67. What was that now? Baby from Supernatural, the car,
Oh yeah, the Impala.
the Impala. That's it. Thank you.
Heck yeah. I'd love to have one of those too. But yeah, these cemeteries, a lot of them have these haunted cemeteries. I've found that they've had a lot in common. They're speaking of the Warrens we were talking about earlier. One of the books that they wrote uh, is called Graveyard. I came across a copy just by accident. Somebody gave it to me in a bunch of books that they were getting rid of, and I read it, and I was really surprised at a lot of the similarities between Bachelor's Grove and there's a cemetery up in Connecticut that I'm going to want to say it's called Union Cemetery, somewhere near where they lived, or it's in Connecticut somewhere. But half of the book is about this particular cemetery, and then I think the rest of the book is just about cemeteries in general, and hauntings pertaining to them, which is like one of my big interests. So, but there is one. They said that Bachelor's Grove. One of the weird things that witnessed in there, um, excuse me, was a guy. We were standing in the cemetery, and anybody who's been in there knows it's woods completely all around, and the path goes by the cemetery and continues to, walking past through the wooded areas of the forest preserve. And me and three other people were there, and we were there all afternoon for hours. And this man came in and passed the cemetery gate, and he was decked out in a suit with a briefcase, and he was on the phone with shiny shoes, looked like he just walked out of a lawyer's office or something.
Wow.
But he never came out. And there's nowhere, once you go back past that, it's all just thick woods. There are no roads. Mostly people don't even go back there anymore. A lot of the paths are overgrown. And it's even for some of us that are, knew the area well and were kind of, not new hikers. It was tough to get through, but the guy never came back, and we stood there and talked right there in the cemetery. We were there for a few hours, maybe 2, 3 hours, never came back.
Wow.
So that was weird. And one of the stories that the Warrens tell in the Graveyard, book is about a man in a brown suit, and it's a little different, but people see him all the time. And apparently one guy was so obsessed with it he almost died because he was like hanging out at the cemetery trying to find, see the spirit again, and he wasn't eating, and he just really went off the end. But same thing with this cemetery they were talking about. There were just so many different stories. They had their own white woman ghost that people saw in there, which, that's there are a lot of cemeteries that have that
Yeah.
legend associated with them.
That lady in white is like God associated with not just cemeteries, but you
Yeah,
have a lot of stories all across the world,
yeah, right,
and they all have a lady in white.
right.
Every state probably has, a couple cities in the same state might.
One, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's amazing some of the similar stories, but that Bachelor's Grove thing and the guy and disappearing, that stuff could be like, like they don't know they're dead and they're like on a continuous loop
yeah, yeah,
doing the last thing they ever did,
yeah.
but that still doesn't make sense because that's a field out in the middle of nowhere. Why would a guy carrying a briefcase and a phone and all that be out in the middle of nowhere?
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I spent a lot of time out there in the woods and the cemetery, and we always came prepared. I wore hiking boots, and it's muddy out there and dirty,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was really, really bizarre. And like I said, he never came out. We never moved. I mean, that's what we used to do. We would go, we had a spirit box that a friend of ours had made, and we would sit and we would do some sessions, and we would just sit and we would talk to people that came and visit and, that kind of stuff. So we were there for hours and he came in, but he never came back out.
Wow.
You
See,
know.
so far, I've experienced a lot of things,
Yeah,
but I haven't seen an actual spirit yet or a
right. Me
ghost.
Yeah, me either. I've had some when my husband died, one of the things I think that got me into this more, because I was always interested in this type of thing my whole life. My dad used to tell the greatest stories, local stuff, because where my father was dairy farmers in Harford County, Maryland, and they'd been there since I think the turn of the century or just before. So they'd been there for a long time, and it was a little tiny town, lots of stories. But with Bachelor's Grove, it just there's so many, my goodness, and the more you delve into it, the more you find out.
Yeah, it was just a spooky place walking back to it,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in the middle of daylight. We were like in the middle of the day. It was like noon, 1 o'clock, something like that. We were walking back there with Dale, and it's like I'm thinking to myself, my God, I would never want to come back here at night.
Yeah, it's spooky. It
You
really
know,
is.
I mean, there's so many places somebody could come and jump out at you, or
Yeah,
you
and
never
we
know if somebody's
actually
doing drugs or having sex. Because I saw some pretty gross stuff walking the path. Used condoms, all kinds of shit. So
yeah.
there's some weird shit going on.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, it has for many, many years. It when they shut that road off that runs in front of it, that's when it became a party spot for
Yep.
how it happens. There's a high school that's only a couple of miles away from Bachelor's Grove in Oak Forest, and it
So,
became the dumping spot. There were, people were dumping tires and refrigerators and beer cans. There's pictures, it's unbelievable.
well, the
Um,
beer cans are probably a lot to do with the high school parties that took place back
yes.
there, and the rubbers, used rubbers, and
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah, and that's how it really amped up after they closed that off, but, we know there was just about a mile or so away from the cemetery back in the '40s, there was a, dance hall, and it was called Bachelor's Grove Hall, and it was the thing we actually found nobody had found pictures of this, even the Historical Society. And our one friend, Bill Swinford, took Carl and I to a different historical society. And lo and behold, it was a smaller historical society, but one of the guys that worked there, his mother actually had pictures of the
wow,
place. And yeah, it was a really incredible find. And but what happened and the story that she told to him and he told us is that, it was a night of dancing and obviously drinking. It was a bar, and they after they were done, the bar closed, it was the thing to do to walk with your date, your girl, to the cemetery, tell her a scary story, maybe she jumps in your arms, that kind of
right,
thing.
right.
So we know it was even going on way back then, and it just, I think, kind of, snowballed. People started visiting it more, we know in the '30s, I think maybe '32 it was, we believe that Robert Ripley was there because he mentions we have the one of his articles that ran in the newspaper, where he mentions Bachelor's Grove Cemetery.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was kinda notorious before the '60s and '70s, but it had been so neglected by then, and there were no family members to, take care of it anymore. Although one of my favorite stories is the last caretaker was an older gentleman, and he used to go out there and try to run off these teenagers, that were messing around and vandalizing and drinking beer and stuff, and he'd hide in the bushes. And the one time, they interviewed him, he said he was out there with his friend and he took a gun with him. And he jumped out at these kids that were in the cemetery, and I guess they took the gun from him and, you know, clocked him on the head, knocked him out. Well, the police came and, they helped him up and stuff. He wasn't really mad that he got knocked out. He was just really mad they took his gun.
Mm.
So there were people after he passed. There was nobody to really look out after it. And I
Well,
think that's
it's a
when
shame too because you can obviously when you go out there, you can obviously see the destruction.
oh yeah.
People. There was a stone that was tipped over, probably not even anywhere near the right location of where this tombstone was, but you could see it was tipped over, and they were burning things on it.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
obviously see the scorch marks in the
Yeah.
marble or cement or whatever those headstones are made out of, you
Yeah,
know?
the vandalism there has been absolutely horrendous. I don't know how people live with themselves doing that kind of stuff. In the 70s, we have articles, news articles where they reported they found 7 teenagers in there. They arrested them. The week before, they had been in there and they dug up somebody's grave. And they didn't say to the extent of what they found. They said that the police had found the next day a fire pit and they found metal coffin handles in there. And so that made them come back. The teenagers had come back to do more destruction after doing that. And they were waiting for them because after that happened, of course, they were patrolling and they see them and they were all kids. They were underage because nobody was,
Yeah,
they
and
names.
and let's see. Then there was oh, what was it? Like people, the satanic worshipers that go back there and do their little thing. And it's
Yeah.
sad because you know this is may not be a public place or whatever anymore, but still, if you feel the need to have to destroy stuff,
Yeah. I
I,
don't
I
get it.
don't know where you rate on the human scale because some of that, I mean, even the graffiti, I can see tagging the trains. I get that. The train cars and stuff like that. Okay, I can
Mhm.
get that. But you go and tag those some underneath a road where there's a tunnel going through, but uh, I was at this place in Wisconsin. It's one of those ones that's supposed to be enchanted. If you bring an offering of Skittles, you might see the gnomes and the fairies and stuff. But it's a very beautiful, serene, isolated location.
Right.
Okay, got a little stream, a waterfall, the whole works. It's really
Right.
nice. You get down there and there's like the tunnel under the road that then it goes through from one side to the other, you know and it's not even a walk through tunnel. It's like for water, so the dam
Right.
doesn't build up. Anyway, they graffiti all over,
Right.
and it's like Jesus Christ, you
Yeah.
know And it's not
Yeah.
even decent graffiti where it looks like pictures. It's just like,
Right.
somebody uses
Right.
spray paint and putting the gang symbols up there and stuff.
Mm.
And it's like, Jesus Christ, people. Ain't you
Yeah.
got nothing better to do in life? Because I
No.
went
Yeah.
out there. My wife and I went out there because we really wanted to see this place. We forgot Skittles. So, see, I read
Mm.
about it in one of Chad Lewis's books.
Yeah.
He's a famous author from Wisconsin.
Uh-huh.
So I read about this place and I had to go see for myself.
Yeah.
And it's just upsetting some of the some of the people have to tag this stuff with their graffiti.
Yeah. Well, with Bachelor's Grove too, those stones, there are, I think, I believe 21 or 22 pieces mostly of the headstones left. There's only a couple of them that are still standing, that have all their pieces. Um, and that's out of, we believe, anywhere from about 120 to maybe 200 headstones that used to
Wow.
be in there. Yeah, and that's all that's left. And it's really sad. Most of them have been stolen. There was one gentleman that did a lot of um, the cleanup in like the 90s and the early 2000s of all the beer and the cans and the junk and stuff. And he actually, did a lot of good there. And I don't know, he also found, a couple of the headstones that had been missing and brought them back, which was really remarkable, but, there's a couple others that we found out through other people said, "Hey, this guy's got a headstone from Bachelor's Grove," and, the story is really sad, and, we reached out to the guy, and he doesn't wanna give the headstone up.
Well,
So,
it's kind of
we
sad
don't
that people
understand.
have to steal those.
Yeah,
I went to now here's a a real famous story because the guy, a lot of things were based on him as far as horror movies are concerned. But you got Ed Gein,
mhm,
and we went to Plainfield Cemetery
yeah,
where he's buried. His headstone's missing, and it's been stolen more than once. And apparently, the guy that has it now refuses to give it back.
right, and
It's gonna
I'm not
stay
sure
in his
how much.
basement or whatever it is. And it's like, but it's like,
Right, we don't
you
get it.
know, it's like Jesus Christ. You have just because the guy's like famous and so on and so forth, or infamous, I should say. You
Yeah,
have to steal his headstone.
yeah,
Really?
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Well, that's one of the ones that we went to was, that I in my travels in the, Chicago, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin area was, uh, oh my goodness, it's slipping my mind, Dillinger,
Oh yeah,
in what is it? Indiana, Crown Hill? Is it Crown Hill Cemetery? I think, I may be having a brain glitch right now, but Dillinger's grave, they is it concrete that they concreted? His father had
yeah.
his grave done so that nobody would desecrate, that they couldn't get to him.
But they could
So,
still steal the headstones. You wonder how many times the headstones of some famous people have been stolen
I
over the
mean,
years.
I'm sure Capone is buried there outside of Chicago too in Hillside. And, I'm surprised that one hasn't gone missing, but, um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of famous people buried around there.
So where can people find you and look you up? We got to end this soon. Here.
Yeah. So, you can find me on Facebook by my name. That's my main hub for everything. I have a page for Haunted Joliet Prison. I have an Instagram for, Tombstone Travels,
That's the
and,
link.
yeah,
Okay.
tombstonetravels.com. So that's mostly, and just me, Instagram. I have a TikTok, all the socials, and I'm either there under my name or Tombstone Travels mostly anymore.
So what's next for you?
I'm working on a new book.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yes, really great story. Again, old story about a witch doctor. This is one that I grew up with in my area. That I grew up with, and more so as an adult. Um, and it's about a place called Ray Myers Hollow.
Wow.
Uh, you can Google it and see. I also wrote a little blog about it on my Tombstone Travels blog at tombstonetravels.com. So, but that's exciting. So,
So we'll have to check that out when it comes out.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Love talking to you.
And we'll be back next week. And till then, stay safe. And remember, anything's possible.